Hello there, and thanks so much for joining me for another tutorial. I'm Erin Eno, and today we're going to be taking a look at how to paint 3 loose flowers that you can start using in your floral compositions. We're going to take a look at the rose using 2 different kind of viewpoint angles, the anemone at 2 angles. This one's a little wonky, but you'll get the idea how to structure it, and a totally made up flower, which happens to be my favorite. If you do like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up, and also to see more tutorials like this one or to join us when we do the full composition, please be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. Grab your paints and let's get started. Today I'm going to be using my Baohong Academy cold press watercolor paper. It's 140 pound, 100% cotton. This is a block, but you don't need to be painting on a block today. I'm just doing that because it was handy. I have my Royal Talons Van Gogh paints in my palette, a jar of water and a paper towel, and I have 3 brushes. I have a Curry's size 10 round in their 2500 series. I have a Princeton Neptune in a size 8 round, and I have a size 6 round in the Curry's 2400 series. I may reach for a smaller brush at some point, but right now I'm thinking this should do just fine. So a little while ago I did a video on some floral fillers and asked if you wanted to see them used in a composition and how I placed them and why I placed them where I did to create interest, color, contrast, whatnot. And a couple of you had responded and said you would like to see that for sure. And I thought, well, then let's just touch on getting some loose flowers together. Then when we have the flowers and the fillers, we can do a composition. So I guess a little over a year ago, quite a while ago, I had done a video on 4 ways to paint loose roses, and it's one of my most popular videos, but I thought I would just do a loose rose here. Very quick one. I did it 4 ways in that video, and some were a little more detailed. That's not what we want to do here. We want to keep this nice and loose, so you're not like stressing too much. So I thought I'd just do a quick rundown on a very simple generic loose rose. Okay, so we're going to start with that. So I'm using quinacridone rose, and I'm going to start with it quite pigmented just for the beginning. And I'm using my Princeton Neptune because I like to use soft brushes when I do my loose roses. So the first thing you're going to do is just do these squiggle lines for the very center of the rose, just like that, just really rough, just like that. Then you're going to dip your dip your brush in your water and just do a C curve by pressing down and lifting up, just like that. We're going to do 3 of them. Okay. Now we want this darker in the center and lighter as we go out, so I'm going to dip my brush in my water again, run it on the edge of my jar, and we're going to start just past the halfway point of this first C curve and do another C curve, just like that. Then we're going to start halfway beyond this previous C curve, and do the same thing. Bring it around. And I'm going to go back in and dip my water in my brush, or my brush in my water, and we're going to do that a few more times. Okay, so you can see it's getting lighter as you move out. This is a fair size rose, it doesn't need to be this big. And then to give it a little bit of depth, you can just dry off your brush, go back into that heavier pigment, and just tap some in towards the center. Okay, and that's going to bleed out where it's wet, but it's going to give you a little bit of depth on these petals. And just do it loosely. Okay, we're not going for realism here. This is just strictly a quick loose rose. Okay, and you can see that starting to bleed out. Some areas won't bleed out as much because the paper's already absorbed. Because the paint is already absorbed, you can soften those up play around with it a bit, but don't spend a lot of time on it. Just let it do what it's going to do. Now, the other thing is, in your floral arrangements, you want your flowers to not all be facing head on, not all be like a dead bird's eye view. I do not have enough practice in my roses to do a perfect side view. I'm going to be honest with you, but we're going to give it a go. We're going to give it a go just to have a rose on just a little bit of an angle, nothing too severe, okay? And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to start the same way. I'm just going to make this center just a little bit darker. So we're going to start the same way, and we're going to do little squiggles for the center, but I'm going to do them more of an oval shape, as if the rose is kind of tilted this way. So everything's going to be on a little more angle view, okay? So I'm making them a little longer and oval shaped like that. But then you're going to do the same thing. You're going to do your C curve, and another C curve. But because it's tilted, we're going to see a little more of this, and these are going to be kind of pushed back. I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to do wider petals on this side and just narrower ones towards the back. Okay, and I'm going to make it more oblong this way. I don't know if this is going to work, but we're going to see. This is kind of just how I kind of visualize it. So I'm going to put more petals down towards the bottom, and the ones at the back you wouldn't see so much because they're tilted back. Okay, so that's kind of my theory behind that. So it's not like a drastic angle, but it's just enough to make it a little different from the head-on view. So it's just enough to put a little bit of interest in your floral piece, okay? So just like that. Then the next one we're going to do, I just want to keep this simple, so that's why we're not just like going crazy on this. The next one I thought we would do is an anemone. Let me move my water jar, and I want to do it kind of like maybe a smoky blue. So I'm going to use indigo, and I'm just going to put a little bit of Payne's gray in there with it. And that's quite strong. Indigo is really highly pigmented, so I want to water this down quite a bit. Like quite a bit. Okay, and we're just going to start with heart-shaped kind of petals. Just like that. And an anemone has 6 to 8 petals. We're just going to do 6. We're going to leave white space in the middle for the center. Okay. And you can have the petals touch. You can leave white space between them if you like. You can do some lighter like this. This one might be a touch heavy. I want to make sure it stays wet though, so I'm just going to wet this up just a titch. Okay, so there you have 6 petals. It's a little off balance, but it's okay. These petals got a little small. Just going to make these ones a little bit bigger. I know I've got weird overlapping lines there. I'm not too concerned about that. but they are a little heavy. Just going to tap up some of the pigment. See, indigo is pretty staining, so once I kind of made that mistake, it's kind of hard to fix it, but it's okay because we're going to put paint over top of that. So while it's still wet, I'm just going to take the tip of my brush and just add some pigment in along the top, down towards the bottom, like so. You can draw some or paint some lines going right up to the top if you want. And where it's not bleeding, just give it a little bit of help, because this petal had kind of dried a little quickly. Okay, now we're going to let that dry. You could go in with a smaller brush, and I'm just going to add some heavy pigment towards the center, like so. Okay, then I'm going to rinse and dry off my brush, and I'm just going to flick some of this pigment out. You don't have to do this. I just thought it would be kind of interesting to get a bit of texture on there. Remember, we want to keep them loose. Okay, I don't want you having to stress over stuff like this when you're doing your floral composition. And while that's drying, because we want that to dry before we can go in and do the centers, we'll do one that's on a little bit of an angle. So I've got a little more paint here now. I don't know if I've mixed up the exact color, but you'll get the idea. So we're going to do 3 petals, 4 actually. And because we're going to tilt this, the last 2 petals we're going to do, actually the last 3, we're going to make this one a little bit narrower, because the front petals that are facing you, when you tilt it back, they're going to be, or actually when we're tilting it forward, they're going to be foreshortened. Okay, so we're tilting this way. So we're going to do these guys shorter. I like to do them almost in a bit of a scoop shape as well. Okay, just like that. To get a little bit of a highlight on this edge here, to make it look like they're kind of curled up a bit, you can go in and pick some pigment up, just like that. Okay, and again, go in with a dry, reasonably dry brush and some of that heavier, darker pigment, and tap the bottom. I don't think I'm going to make this as dark as the one that we just did, the head-on one, but we'll see how it goes. This might be too dry up here already. This paper is very thirsty, so it soaks in really quickly, and unless you have a lot of water on it, it can tend to dry up on you a little bit. So this edge isn't bleeding, so I'm just going to give it a little bit of help with just a touch of water. Okay, and we'll go back in and tap some heavier pigment there. take that smaller brush and just start flicking some of this up. You don't have to do this, like I say, this is totally optional. I just thought we'd give it a go. And when you do this, follow the curve of the petals, okay? Just like that. I like this anemone way better than that one. That last petal down here is really wonky, but I'm gonna see if I can fix it because it's kind of bugging me. Just add a little more to these guys to make the shape not so crazy. But we want it to be loose, so you know what? I'm going to tell you not to stress over it, so I'm not going to stress over it. So now for the center of that one, I'm going to go back to my Princeton Neptune, and I'm going to get some straight up black. Okay, and I'm just going to do a circle in the middle, and I am going to leave a little bit of white, so it's a rough circle. I'm just kind of tapping, and I'm just going to leave a little bit of white, and then I'm going to take my smaller brush, go into that black, okay, and just with the tip of my brush I'm just going to do these little stamen filament lines all around. And if you have to switch to a smaller, even smaller brush than this, some days I can just do this and it's, you know, it works. Other days I have trouble and my lines are all thick. But it seems to be going not too bad. Then I'm going to take that black and just tap dots all around these filaments. And I'm not trying to, you know, put one on the end of each one. It's just, you just want to give it the impression because it is loose, okay? So there's the center of your anemone. Now for this one down here, I'm just going to stick with this smaller brush. Because it is tilted, this won't be a perfect circle. It's going to be more of an oval, okay? So I'm just going to do this oval shape. Again, leaving a little bit of white just for some interest and some life. Okay, then we're going to do the lines just with the tip of your brush. And then because it's tilted, the lines in this, at this edge are going to be shorter because you're kind of looking down on them. So they won't be as long as the filaments at the back. Just put your dots in. And there's your slightly on an angle anemone. I'm not really happy with this one at all, but I hope you get the idea, and I hope when you do it, your shapes of your petals come out a lot better than mine. And then I think what we'll do is, just so you can see it visually, we'll put some leaves on the roses, just so you can see. I don't really want to make this a leaf tutorial because the whole idea is that we're going to use these in our bouquets when we do the composition. So just going to do a leaf here. Okay, so just pressing down, pulling your brush up, and then another one over here. Brush isn't quite wet enough. I've been playing around a lot on non-cotton paper, So this paper is really thirsty, and I've kind of gotten out of the habit of how to use it. Maybe we'll just put one on this side, just so you have an idea what it looks like when you get some leaves in there. And then the third flower that I want to show you is my very favorite, because it's no flower at all. It's just whatever you come up with. So I think I'm going to do a very light pink. I'm going to start with a very light. Actually, you know what? I don't want to use quinacridone rose though. I'm going to use, I am going to use carmine. So I'm just going to do a very light wash of the carmine. And I'm just going to do, even that's too heavy. Too heavy. I'm just going to do these fluffy petals. These are my favorite because you're not trying to do anything, you're just making petals. You're not trying to match anything or make it look like anything in particular. Okay, you can even just get as rough as you want, as crazy and loose as you like. Okay, so then what I like to do is add in a little hit of yellow. And I mean just a little bit, just with the tip of my brush. I'm just going to just tap in some yellow here and there. I've got some glare on my paper. I'm having trouble seeing that. You can even tap in a little bit of gray. So I'll get a really light wash of that Payne's gray. Take most of it off my brush, and you can even just tap some of that in. Just gives it some life. And then I'm going to dry my brush off. I'm going to go into that carmine again. Just like a medium wash. I'm going to take some of it off my brush, and we're just going to tap around the outer edge. And you want to do this with the smaller brush because you don't want to drop too much color on here. Do some lines up there. Then we're going to go into some deeper carmine and tap it in the center. Just like that. Then you can rinse and dry off your brush and just same thing that we did with that anemone, just drag some of this up. Just puts a little texture in your flowers. And then you can go into basically pure pigment and just tap lightly the very center. It depends on how deep and rich you want it in the middle. You can go really light and keep it all light if that's what you choose, but you can just play around. See what you come up with. I don't think I want to drag any of this out. Let's see. Maybe a little bit. And then for the center of this one, I think I'm just going to use sepia. I don't want to do black. Okay, so I'm putting quite a heavy dose of it there. Then I'm going to rinse off my brush a bit and just kind of drag it out a bit. So there's light areas and dark areas. And it's going to bleed into the base of some of those petals because they're still a little wet. But you see, we're just going to keep it loose. We're going to leave some white in there. Tap in some heavier sepia. Just keep it loose and organic. And then I think I will put a couple of leaves on this side view rose here. Just so it's not left out. But those leaves are all going to be different when it comes to your composition, but hopefully that gives you some ideas. And I don't like how much that sepia is bleeding out, so I'm going to take my small brush and just pick some of that up. Ideally, I should have waited as well, but you know what? Sometimes these little things that happen that you don't want to happen turn out to make your flower quite nice, so don't stress over them. You can always just play around with it. See, so now I'm just taking my clean brush and just kind of pushing that out, pushing it down. Because these are supposed to be loose, they're going to do things on their own that you might not necessarily want them to do. But honestly, that's the beauty of watercolor, I think. So there you go. There are 3 flowers that you can start working on to use in your floral compositions. I hope you guys enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it helpful. And I really hope you'll join me when we get to the video where we're going to make a floral composition with some of these flowers and some of the fillers that I did in my previous video. If you missed the filler video, I will pop it up at the end of this video, and I will also put it in the description box. That's it for today. Thanks so much for joining me, and I will see you next time.